Hey, Shalom, Shalom on the stuff. Source by giving all praise to Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, but Hashem Kadash. Double on the stuff, positive GMS, and honest two brothers doing the work in truth, sincerity. This one is on a bit of history that I came across, by chance today. I wanted to share with you. It's mainly just going to be a bit of this article from the Smithsonian magazine, smithsonianmag.com. Right, it's on Cannibalism in Europe, right? And this is not something that's like it's the first time I've ever actually heard it spoken about or read about it anywhere. So it's not a part of history that Esau wants to tell you about, because Esau likes to say that he's the civilized one. He's the one that brought civilization into the world. Yet you go to, say, Jamestown, I think that was the first colony. If my memory serves me correct, that was the first colony that they went over there in the land of the Americas to what's the word I'm looking for? When they went over there to the Americas, right? And then when they looked at some of the bones, they had markings on the bones that were that were consistent with cannibalism, right? He's saying like those Edomites that went over there to the Americas, they basically, they were cannibalizing each other, right? So apart from that, this is the first time I've actually heard, come across it in Europe, right? And this is basically, they used to think that if you had ate corpses, right, then, and it's not whole corpses, like, we'll go into it, but they thought that you could use it as medicine, right? Let me just confirm what I said. And Jamestown. Yeah, first permanent English settlement. Right? So yeah, you always want to make sure your information is correct. Right? So yeah. Go into this as where's a good place to start? Okay, I'll just start from the top. So sweetness and wit. No, the last line of a 17th century poem by John Donne prompted Louis Noble's quest. Women, the line read, are not only sweetness and wit, but mummy possessed. Right, sweetness and wit, sure, but mummy. Right, says in her search for an explanation, Noble, a lecturer of English at the University of New England in Australia, made a surprising discovery. That word recurs throughout literature in early modern Europe. Right, from Donne's Love Alchemy to Shakespeare's Othello and Edmund Spenser, the Ferrari Queen, because mummies and other preserved and fresh human remains were a common ingredient in medicine of that time. And not long ago, Europeans were cannibals. Right, so basically this has been hidden in like literary, that we read and we come across, but it's not something that's spoken about a lot. Right, it says Noble's new book, Medicinal Cannibalism in Early Modern English Literature and Culture, and another by Richard Sugg of England's University of Durham, says revealed that for several hundred years, peaking in the 16th and 17th century, many Europeans, including royalty, priests, and scientists, routinely ingested remedies containing human bones, blood, and fat as medicines for everything from headaches to epilepsy. Right, so these guys were just going off, and you think of, let me get this. Right, it says 1 Timothy 6:20 says, O Timothy, keep that which is committed to thy trust, avoiding profane and vain babblings and oppositions of sciences falsely so called. Right, because the word science is supposed to mean truth, right? Knowledge, right? Knowledge, science. No, knowledge, sorry, it's supposed to mean knowledge, right? And opposition of science so called, but this isn't knowledge. This is foolishness, right? You read, what was it, Sirach? Is it 42? No, 43rd chapter. No, it's not what I want. What's this scripture? Slot. My memory escapes me. Let's get this one. 43rd chapter. 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 43r Right, it says Psalms 104:14. Right, it says he causeth the grass to grow for the cattle and herb for the service of man, that he may bring forth food out of the earth. Right, so the the herbs of the earth, that's what you're supposed to be using for medicine, not no human flesh. That's just off. Right, this is the one I want. Sirach 38:1. Right, it says Sirach 38. It says, honor a physician with the honor due unto him, for the uses which he may have of him. Right, it says, for Yahweh hath created him. Right, so basically you give honor to a physician, right, because there are some herbs that, if you take them incorrectly, will kill you. Right, there are some, for instance, if you have I think pomegranate, unripe pomegranate or something like that, that can what you call it, cause an abortion. Right, so if your woman's pregnant, then tell her not to be eating no raw pomegranate, man. Right, but a physician would know all this and will be the one giving the information on it, telling you, don't eat this, don't eat that, this is how you take this, you're supposed to have this amount, a dosage, this one you can only apply on your skin, this one you can ingest. Right, it says, for of the Most High cometh healing, and ye shall receive honor of the King. Right, and ultimately that's what it is. It's the Lord that gives healing, because you can take the herbs and then you can pray, but if the Lord wants you to be dealt with that ailment, you got to just deal with it. Right, it says, the skill of the physician shall lift up his head, and in the sight of great men he shall be in admiration. It says, the Lord hath created medicines out of the earth, and he that is wise shall not abhor them. Right, so the medicines are already on the earth. Those are the herbs, as we read in Psalms 104. Right, and a wise man will not abhor them. Right, so you get Esau nowadays, you talk about the herbs, Esau's batting an eyelid saying, oh, you're this, you're that, but these times that he basically makes compounds based off of the herbs, or mimicking the herbs, and those compounds just kill you. Right, so I'll carry on. Right, it says nobles, we read that. It says there were few vocal opponents of the practice, even though cannibalism in the newly explored Americas reviled as a mark of savagery. Right, so mummies were stolen from Egyptian tombs, and skulls were taken from Irish burial sites. Grave diggers robbed and sold body parts. The question was not, should you eat human flesh, but what sort of flesh should you eat, says Sugg. Right, so that's what the historian is saying. Right, basically pointing out that back then it was just so common. It wasn't a thing of sort of like you get beef. People aren't talking about should you eat beef. They say, oh yeah, no, this is the best cut, this is where you go to get the best beef, that Wagyu beef, this, that, and the other. Right, so the answer at first was Egyptian mummy, which was crumbled into tinctures to stanch internal bleeding, but other parts of the body soon followed. Skull was one common ingredient, taken in powdered form to cure head ailments. Right, so these guys were just base men. They were just being silly. Right, it says not saying that you got, what you call it, you got them witch doctors out there in the land of Africa at the moment that will be doing similar things. We know that the we know that the wicked elite, they be doing blood sacrifices, human sacrifices, all of these sort of things. Right, so so where was I? It says his personal thing. Am I looking? Skull was one common. Thomas Willis, 17th century pioneer of brain science, brewed a drink for apoplexy or bleeding that mingled powdered human skull and chocolate. So we're literally having like skull and chocolate. He says, and King Charles II of England sipped the king's drop, his personal tincture containing human skull and alcohol. Right, so like I said, these guys were just going off. Right. You see this, blood was procured as fresh as possible while it was still thought to contain the vitality of the body. This requirement made it challenging to acquire, right? Which you ain't supposed to be eating blood, drinking blood. You ain't, got that here in the scriptures. Leviticus 17:11 says, "For the life of the flesh is in the blood," right? And I have given it unto you upon the altar to make an atonement for your soul. For it is the blood that maketh the atonement of the soul. right? So you read the law, you read into certain things. You ain't supposed to be eating anything with blood. When Jake gets their food, they're supposed to be getting it well done, not no medium rare, as Esau tells the world this is the right way to do it. And in the kingdom, everyone's going to be eating their meat well done, right? There isn't going to be a question about, oh, it tastes better when it's medium rare. No, that ain't going to matter. That's not even going to be a question, right? It says 16th century German Swiss physician Paracelsus believed blood was good for drinking, and one of his followers even suggested taking blood from a living body. While that doesn't seem to have been common practice, the poor, who couldn't always afford the processed compounds sold in apothecaries, could gain the benefits of cannibal medicine by standing by at executions, paying a small amount for a cup of the still warm blood of the condemned. Right, so these guys were just going off. Right, they were just going the fuck off. Right. So I think there was some good stuff in here as well. It says another reason human remains were considered potent was because they were thought to contain the spirit from which they were taken. Right, and you go into the scriptures once again, that was not the case. It's Ecclesiastes 12:7 says, then shall the dust return to the earth as it was, and the spirit shall return to the Most High who gave it. Right, so when you die, you break down into the elements, right, and then your body, your spirit goes back to the Heavenly Father, right? You also have that in Job, the 3rd chapter, right. What is this? It says, why die? Yeah, Job 3:11 says, why died I not from the womb? Why did I not give up the ghost when I came out of the belly? Why did the knees prevent me, or why did the breast I should suffer now should have lain still and been quiet? I should have slept, and I had been at rest with kings and counselors of the earth, which built desolate places for themselves, or with the princes that had gold, who filled their houses with silver. Or as an untimely hidden birth I had not been, as infants which never saw light. There the wicked cease from troubling, and there the weary be at rest. There the prisoners rest together, they hear not the voice of the oppressor. The small and the great are there, and the servant is free from his master. Right, basically going into the fact that, in the spirit world, everyone's there. Right, whether you're wicked, you're a sinner, if you're a spirit, you go back into the spirit world. Not this notion of hell that Esau likes to push out, going back from, what do you call it, the Catholic Church, right? That's one of the doctrines of the Catholic Church, which is just dogma. It's bullshit, right? So we carry on. This was considered a very real part of physiology, linking the body and the soul. Yada. Yeah, I mean, in fact, let me read this. Even at corpse medicine's peak, two groups were demonized for related behaviors that were considered savage and cannibalistic. One was Catholics, whom Protestant condemned for their belief in transubstantiation, that is, that the bread and wine taken during Holy Communion were, through God's power, changed into the body and blood of Mashiach. The other group was Native Americans. Negative stereotypes were justified by the suggestion that these groups practiced cannibalism. Right, it looks like sheer hypocrisy, says Beth A. Conklin, a cultural and medical anthropologist at Vanderbilt University. So these guys were just being hypocrites, man. Right, they were just being hypocrites. Right, yeah, but one thing to note as well is that cannibalism is coming back in a heavy way. It was there before, right? It's recorded in the scriptures, it's prophesied, and it's going to happen again. Right, on this time around. So I'm just going to run through this real quick. It says 2 Kings 6:24 says, and it came to pass after this that Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, gathered all his hosts and went up and besieged Samaria. And there was a great famine in Samaria, and behold, they besieged it until an ass's head was sold for 80 pieces of silver, and the fourth part of a cab of a dove's dung for 5 pieces of silver. Right, basically showing you that, look, man, shit got real. It says, and as the king of Israel was passing by upon the wall, there cried a woman unto him, saying, help my lord, O king. And he said, if Yahweh do not help thee, whence shall I help thee? out of the barn floor, out of the winepress. And the king said unto her, What aileth thee? She answered, This woman said unto me, Give thy son, that we may eat him today, and we will eat my son tomorrow. So we boiled my son and did eat him. And I said unto her on the next day, Give thy son, that we may eat him. And she had hid her son. Right? It says, and it came to pass, when the king heard the words of the woman, that he rent his clothes, and he passed upon the wall. And the people looked, and behold, he had sackcloth upon his flesh. Right? So basically, they had a deal. Say, look, I'm going to cannibalize my son today, and tomorrow we'll cannibalize your son, because it got that deep. Right? But on the second day, the woman had come to her senses, because that hunger had been abated. Right? So she came to her senses and like, look, actually, that's not a good deal. But the fact is, they cannibalized. Right? And what you call it? This is 2 Ezra 16. I'm gonna start from verse. I mean, this whole chapter is good. I'll just start from verse 18. It says, the beginning of sorrows and great mournings, the beginning of famine and great death. Right? So this is prophesied to come, that there will be famine and great death. It says, the beginning of wars, and the powers shall stand in fear. The beginning of evils. What shall I do when these evils shall come? Right? It says, behold, famine and plague, tribulation and anguish are sent as scourges for amendment. Right? And what happens whenever there's a famine? People turn to cannibalism. Right? This was an example, and this is gonna happen again. Right? So laws will, this has been of edification. It's been of use, and yeah, if you want to bring out some more history, then hey, feel free. With that, I'm gonna say shalom.